America hides its darkness in plain sight. Vanished planes, time glitches, deaths in places that don't officially exist, and a silence too perfect to be natural. Put on your headphones, turn off the lights, and cover yourself well. Because after this video, you'll never see the United States the same way again. The last transmission of Flight 739, gone without a trace. It began like any other classified mission. At precisely 8:30 p.m., a military Lockheed L-1049 Super Constellation lifted off from Travis Air Force Base in California. Aboard were 93 U.S. Army soldiers and 3 South Vietnamese military personnel bound for Saigon in the early days of American involvement in Vietnam. The aircraft never made it. Somewhere over the Pacific Ocean, Flight 739 disappeared without a trace. No distress call, no radar blip, no floating debris, nothing. The plane simply vanished into the sky and the US government couldn't or wouldn't explain how. What's worse, at first they didn't even acknowledge the mission. For days, the families were kept in the dark. When the military finally released a statement, it was vague, evasive. The cause, unknown. The location, presumed lost at sea. The search, unsuccessful. But something didn't add up. A mission erased. The official flight path was said to cross the Pacific with a refueling stop at Guam. Yet civilian air traffic controllers in the region were never notified of a military flight that night. Guam reported no sign of incoming aircraft. There was no radar data, no emergency beacon activated. For a military transport this size, loaded with communications tech, it was unheard of. Then came a report from a nearby oil tanker, the SSTL Lenson. The crew claimed they saw a bright flash in the sky around the time the plane was expected to pass overhead. They radioed it in, assuming an explosion, but when questioned, the military downplayed the event, saying it was unrelated. Yet no other incident in that region matched the timing or the description. Families left with shadows. For decades, the families of the soldiers have pushed for answers. They held vigils, they wrote letters. Some received visits from government officials, others were quietly ignored. A memorial was only erected almost 50 years later, in 2006, by a private veterans organization, not the government. In one of the few public interviews, the daughter of a missing soldier said,
"It's like they were erased. Like someone didn't want them to be remembered."
The aircraft was never found, the remains were never recovered, and there's no official cause for the disappearance. Conspiracies, whispers, and cold trails theories swirl even now. Some believe Flight 739 was part of a covert operation headed to Laos or Cambodia for a Black Ops mission. If true, the crash or disappearance may have been covered up to avoid diplomatic fallout. Others point to the strange timing. In 1962, just months before major escalations in Vietnam, the CIA was deeply involved in Southeast Asia. Was this a recruitment mission gone wrong, or an experiment no one was supposed to survive? And then there are those who go further. One theory claims the flight encountered something unnatural, something not bound by physics as we understand it. Electronic interference, sudden silence, a flash in the sky. The Pacific has a long history of strange disappearances, from warships to commercial planes. Some call it coincidence, others say there's something out there, waiting. What they left behind. 93 soldiers, gone. Their names never etched into the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. Their story barely mentioned in textbooks. Just faded photos, old letters, and families still waiting for the doorbell to ring. This wasn't just a flight that vanished. It was a truth that never landed. And Flight 739 wasn't the last. Because what disappeared that night over the Pacific wasn't the only thing the sky has ever swallowed. The base that wasn't there, Dulce's Black Door. Location remote, arid, quiet. Official records, nothing unusual. But locals know better. They call it the hum, a deep vibration beneath the earth, constant and unnatural. Some nights it pulses like a heartbeat. Others it roars, just beneath the threshold of hearing. Cattle flee from the fields. Dogs refuse to walk near Archuleta Mesa. And beneath it all, there's something no one wants to say out loud. There's a door underground, and it leads to something that doesn't want to be found. The town that hears what no one else can. It began with whispers, residents reporting strange booms underground, power surges, and low-frequency rumbles with no geological source. Some chalked it up to minor quakes, but USGS had no data, no records, no explanation. Then came the sightings. Flickers of blue light over the mesa, columns of white mist rising in straight lines against the wind. One rancher, visibly shaken, said he saw a silver disc rising straight out of the mountain, silent and glowing, and always the hum, like something alive, breathing beneath the bedrock. Enter Phil Schneider. In 1995, a man named Phil Schneider stepped onto a small conference stage in Las Vegas. Nervous, fidgeting and visibly injured, missing fingers and with a long scar down his torso, he made a claim that would ripple across the fringe world for decades.
I helped build a secret underground base beneath Dulce, and I barely made it out alive.
According to Schneider, he was a geological engineer contracted by the US government to assist with underground tunneling using advanced plasma boring machines. The goal, deep military installations for continuity of government programs. But what they found underground wasn't just rock. During the excavation, Schneider said his team broke into a pre-existing cavern system, one that shouldn't have been there. The air changed, the lights flickered, and then they saw movement. Not human. He described a sudden firefight, chaos, soldiers screaming, weapons malfunctioning. He was hit in the chest by a beam-like weapon that left him permanently injured. Others weren't so lucky. He claimed 66 personnel died in what became known, unofficially, as the Dulce Wars. Impossible claims, or silenced truth. Schneider showed documents, maps, medical files. He claimed his own father had been involved in nuclear submarines and early experiments in high-tech propulsion. But 3 months after a string of public talks, Phil Schneider was found dead in his apartment. An extension cord wrapped tightly around his neck. Ruled a suicide, yet many found the circumstances suspicious. There were no signs of depression, no suicide note, and most alarmingly, all of his papers and physical evidence were missing. His death, like his story, was swallowed by silence. The Dulce papers, the whistleblowers, and the Black Door other whistleblowers have come forward independently with eerily similar claims. Some speak of multi-level underground structures, reaching down 7 floors or more. Others describe genetic experiments, the splicing of human and non-human DNA, screams heard through the ventilation shafts, creatures seen only in silhouettes behind thick glass, surveillance footage that erased itself. There's talk of a black door deep underground, one that never opens yet is constantly watched, a door that hums faintly, a door no one was allowed to approach. But why Dulce? Geographically, the region sits atop unique geology, deep fault lines, abundant natural caverns, and layers of volcanic basalt, ideal for excavation, easy to hide, difficult to reach, and it's near Los Alamos, birthplace of the atomic bomb, a nexus of secrecy since the 1940s, the perfect place to vanish things, not meant for daylight, still happening? As recently as 2018, hikers reported seeing black SUVs parked deep in the desert, unmanned drones circling above the mesa, and fences that weren't there on satellite maps. Cattle mutilations still occur, with surgical precision, no blood, no tracks. The FBI doesn't investigate, and the hum, still there, constant, like something vast is still awake beneath the town. You can't find what isn't there. There are no official documents proving the Dulce base exists, no GPS coordinates, no signs, no admissions. But for the people who live there, the ranchers, the tribal elders, the technicians who once worked for defense contractors and never returned to the mesa, the silence is more than suspicious. It's designed, because when something was never acknowledged, it can never be denied, and where the ground shakes, sometimes time breaks with it, because the next mystery isn't about what lies beneath, it's about a man who shouldn't exist, and vanished just as impossibly. The time traveler of Torrid, the man from nowhere. It was supposed to be a normal customs inspection. It wasn't. The man looked ordinary, mid-40s, well-dressed in a tailored grey suit. He spoke fluent French and Japanese, calm, cooperative. Nothing seemed out of place until he handed over his passport. The country of origin? Tord. The customs officer blinked. Where? Tord, the man repeated, confused by the question. It's right between France and Spain. There is no such country. Not in 1954, not now, not ever. Documents from a world that doesn't exist. The passport looked genuine. Leather cover, embossed seal, authentic stamps. The man had official visas from France, Japan, and multiple Middle Eastern nations. He even had business correspondence in his briefcase, letters from a company he claimed to work for, headquartered in Torrid. Still calm, the man pulled out a world map and pointed to where Torrid was supposed to be. But in our world, that space is occupied by Andorra. That's when his demeanor shifted, from confused to frightened. "They've made a mistake," he insisted. "This isn't possible. My country's been there for 1,000 years. Escalation Airport security was alerted. 2 immigration officials and a translator joined the room. The man answered every question with perfect logic, consistent details, and frustrated disbelief. His native language matched no existing dialect, but his fluency in English, French, and Japanese was flawless.
My country is Taured. It has existed for 1,000 years.
Where is this Taured located?
It is between France and Spain.
Even more bizarre, his currency was legitimate, but from no known nation. His driver's license, company ID, and checks all bore the same symbol, a gold lion with wings. Authorities photocopied everything. Experts were called in, and as night fell, the decision was made. Detain him in a secured hotel room under surveillance until morning. The disappearance. The room was on the upper floor of the hotel. One entrance, no balcony, no window exit. 2 guards stationed outside the door. They checked on him every hour, until 6:45 a.m. When they entered for the final check, the room was empty. The bed had not been slept in. No signs of struggle. Every item he had brought, the passport, the documents, the briefcase, were gone. Security footage? Static. Cameras malfunctioned for exactly 7 minutes, no more, no less. Authorities searched every floor, every exit, every square inch of the hotel. Nothing. No trace. The man from Torrid had vanished as inexplicably as he had arrived. Official silence, unofficial files. The case was quietly buried. No press release. No public inquiry. But decades later, fragments of the story surfaced in declassified files and second-hand airport accounts. In 1992, a retired customs officer claimed the story was true in every detail. He had seen the passport himself, held it, and he remembered one thing vividly. The man wasn't panicking, he said.
All those years, all those faces, each stamp, a story I'll never fully know.
Some say he was a time traveler from a parallel dimension, one so close to ours that only small details like national borders were different. Others believe it was a government experiment, a psychological test, or a cover for someone involved in Cold War espionage using an elaborate fake identity. And then there are those who go deeper, that he accidentally crossed over from a version of Earth that no longer exists, that the map in his mind belonged to a history we never lived. One researcher in Japan claimed to have traced the lion wing insignia to an obscure symbol found on ancient Iberian artifacts used by no modern country, but identical in design. Coincidence? Or a leak from a different timeline? The echo that remains. Every few years, a report surfaces. A man stopped at an airport with documents that don't match any nation. A language no AI translator can process. A person with memories of places we've never mapped. They vanish just as quickly. But the case of Torrid remains the first, the cleanest, the strangest. A man with a name, a job, and a homeland, from a country that never existed, except to him. And if people can slip into our world, what happens to those who vanish from it forever? Because not all disappearances happen in the sky. Some take place on the road, on a winter night, after a basketball game, when 5 men went for a drive and never came back. The Yuba County 5, the boys who walked into nowhere. It was supposed to be a fun night. It became one of the strangest missing persons cases in American history. 5 young men, Gary Mathias, Jack Madruga, Bill Sterling, Ted Wire, and Jack Hewitt, piled into a Mercury Montego and drove 50 miles to attend a college basketball game in Chico. They never made it home. What followed was a trail of broken logic, eerie silence, and unspeakable cold. And to this day, no one can explain what happened on that road or why 4 of them never came back. The disappearance. The game ended around 10 p.m. The boys, aged 24 to 32, were excited. Their own Special Olympics basketball tournament was the next day. They talked about it constantly. Their uniforms were laid out at home. Ted even reminded his mom to wake him early. But the next morning, the car was gone. So were they. 3 days later, police found the Mercury Montego abandoned on a remote dirt road in the Plumas National Forest, 70 miles from Chico, and in the complete opposite direction of their homes in Yuba City. The car wasn't stuck. It had a quarter tank of gas and started right up. So why leave it? Even more bizarre. No signs of struggle, flat tires, or engine failure. They simply walked away, into the mountains, the trail into nowhere. For months, searchers combed the forest. Nothing. No footprints, no clothing, no clues. Then came June. As the snow melted, a forest ranger discovered a trailer deep in the woods, part of a forestry service station. Inside lay the body of Ted Wire, frozen, skeletal, and alone. He had survived for up to 13 weeks. His beard had grown. His feet were severely frostbitten. Next to him, opened cans of food neatly stacked. The refrigerator had been emptied. But here's what no one could explain. The trailer had a working propane heater and full canisters. It was never turned on. A locker full of army rations and clothing sat untouched. Ted was wrapped in 8 sheets, tightly tucked, military style, but the boys didn't have military training. He had died from starvation and exposure. Inside a shelter, with food and heat. More discoveries, fewer answers. Not far from the trailer, the bones of Jack Hewitt were found, scattered near the river. Later, remains of Bill Sterling and Jack Madruga were discovered along the road back to the car. All had succumbed to exposure. Only Gary Mathias was never found. To this day, his body has never been recovered. He simply vanished into the woods, or beyond. The oddest detail? Gary was a diagnosed schizophrenic who hadn't missed a dose of his medication in over 2 years. He had extra pills in his pocket the night he disappeared. They were never found. What really happened? Theories abound, none satisfying. Some say they took a wrong turn, panicked, and walked into the woods. But these were boys familiar with the area. Jack Madruga hated the cold. Gary Mathias had army training. Ted was terrified of the dark. Others speculate they picked up a hitchhiker, someone dangerous. But there's no sign of foul play. No injuries beyond hypothermia and exposure. Then there are locals who claim the road they took leads to something else. Something off the map. Old logging roads that aren't supposed to be there. And whispers of lights in the woods. Strange humming at night, sudden static on radios. And people disappearing into the trees. The chilling details. The trailer was 20 miles from where the car was abandoned. That means the boys, some wearing only light jackets, walked through waist-deep snow in pitch black, over jagged terrain, into the mountains, and made no attempt to turn on heat or use supplies. Why? One retired detective later admitted off the record,
"I didn't know what they were running into."
To this day, families hold on to what little they have. Old photos, uniforms never worn, memories of boys who just wanted to play a game. And a single maddening question: why did they leave the car? The answer lies somewhere out there, buried under snow, behind trees, or deep in something far stranger than anyone imagined. And if the forest took them, what happens when what's hidden isn't just in the trees, but inside the earth itself? Because the next mystery leads us into ancient caves, red-haired giants, and secrets too big to fit in textbooks. The Lovelock Cave giants, bones, myths, and what was buried. Lovelock, Nevada. A cracked stretch of desert, bone-dry and wind-carved. But beneath the parched earth lies a cave that shouldn't matter. And yet, for over a century, it's whispered a story no one can fully explain. Not historians, not archaeologists, not even the Smithsonian. Because what was found inside that cave wasn't supposed to exist. The legend, before the dig, long before settlers ever reached Nevada, the local Paiute tribe passed down a story. Not just a tale, a warning. According to tribal elders, long ago their ancestors waged war against a terrifying race of beings, giants with flaming red hair, pale skin, and a hunger for flesh. The Paiute say these beings, called the Site-Ka, once roamed the valleys, stealing food, destroying camps, even kidnapping and eating their people. After years of bloodshed, the tribes banded together and drove the Site-Ka into a cave, Lovelock Cave. They set the entrance ablaze, sealing them inside. None were supposed to survive. Then came the miners. In 1911, a group of guano miners entered Lovelock Cave looking for fertilizer. What they found instead sent shockwaves through early 20th century science. Massive human bones, including a femur the length of a grown man's arm. Oversized sandals, over 15 inches long. Woven fabrics, impossibly well preserved for their supposed age. And most chilling of all, a patch of red hair. Matted and ancient one skull was said to measure over 30% larger than an average human's, with an abnormally pronounced jaw and high cranial dome. The Smithsonian involvement. At first, the discoveries made headlines. Local papers ran bold claims of giant skeletons unearthed and proof of Paiute legends. But then, silence. Artifacts were shipped to various institutions, including the Smithsonian, for analysis. Shortly after, the narrative changed. Suddenly the bones were misidentified. The red hair was just discolored by minerals, and the large skulls filed away, uncatalogued, gone. When independent researchers requested access decades later, they were told no such bones remained in storage. Too many coincidences. Skeptics say it's just exaggeration, that no evidence of giants has ever been scientifically validated. But here's what they can't explain. Photographs exist of excavation teams posing beside oversized skulls. Private collectors in Nevada claim to possess items found in the cave that were never officially recorded. Multiple witnesses, including museum workers, have admitted, off the record, that bones were reclassified or quietly removed. Even the Nevada Historical Society once listed unusually large human remains in their records. The entry was deleted in the 1980s. The myth that won't die the Paiute still tell the story of how the giants screamed as the flames rose in the cave, of how some may have escaped into deeper tunnels never to be seen again, and what's more, other tribes across North America have eerily similar legends. The Choctaw tell of a cannibalistic race of red-haired giants. The Navajo speak of the Starnake people, tall, strong, and from below. Even the early settlers of Nevada recorded finding burial mounds with giant bones, until they, too, vanished. Coincidence or suppressed history? Why would anyone hide this? Because if giants once roamed North America, everything changes. Our timeline of human history, our understanding of indigenous lore, and most threatening of all, the role of institutions like the Smithsonian in shaping what counts as acceptable history. As one independent archaeologist put it,
"If they found something that big, that real, they'd never tell us. It would break too many rules of what we think we know."
the cave. Today, you can still visit Lovelock Cave. There's a small plaque, a few scattered petroglyphs, but no mention of giants. No hint of what miners once dragged into the sunlight and tried to explain away. The entrance is still there. The silence is still there, and some say so is the hum deep in the rock, because sometimes what was buried isn't done yet. And if the past can leave behind bones, the present still whispers beneath the waves, because the final mystery, it lies under dark water, the dark, still sending a signal. The Baltic Sea anomaly of Lake Michigan, it still sends a signal. A body of water so vast it behaves like an ocean. Storms vanish into it, boats disappear, and beneath the waves, something waits. Since the early 1980s, divers, sonar operators, and military contractors have all reported one impossible thing: a massive metallic object buried beneath the lake floor, perfectly symmetrical, perfectly silent, but still alive, because it's still sending a signal. The triangle. The area is known as the Lake Michigan Triangle. Bounded by Manitowoc, Wisconsin, Ludington, Michigan, and Benton Harbor, it's been called America's Bermuda Triangle. Ships have gone missing here, planes have dropped off radar, compasses fail, radios go silent, and people have vanished without explanation. But in the late 20th century, technology finally gave us a glimpse beneath the surface. And what it found shouldn't be there. The discovery. In 1987, a research vessel mapping sediment patterns in the lake picked up something odd. Anomalous sonar returns in a perfectly circular formation, approximately 250 feet wide, located 130 feet below the surface. At first, they assumed it was a shipwreck, but no wreck had that shape. A decade later, private diving teams attempted to locate the formation again. When they did, they surfaced pale and silent. One diver described it as a stone saucer the size of a small stadium, with grooves and steps carved into its surface. Another swore it emitted low vibrations, not sound, exactly, but something deeper. Worse, every team that got too close reported sudden equipment failure. Radios stopped working, lights shorted out, cameras glitched into static. The Baltic Connection. In 2011, across the Atlantic, divers exploring the Baltic Sea made headlines for finding an eerily similar structure. Circular, stone-like, metallic. Same groove, same symmetry, same signal. It became known as the Baltic Sea anomaly. Within weeks, comparisons were made. Satellite imaging experts noticed both formations shared not only size and shape, but even placement relative to magnetic fields in the Earth's crust. Were these two pieces of the same ancient technology, or entrances to something buried deeper? The signal. What makes both anomalies even more unnerving is this: they're emitting a low-frequency radio signal. one that doesn't match any known pattern. Not man-made, not geological, and not constant. The signal pulses, as if reacting to something, in cycles, with gaps as if waiting for a reply. Several attempts have been made to triangulate its source. None have succeeded. Military contractors have allegedly conducted black dives near both sites, operations never officially recorded. And when one drone submersible attempted to anchor to the structure, it shut down completely. Recovered hours later, its internal memory had been wiped. So what is it? Theories range from the fringe to the terrifying. An ancient spacecraft, buried long before the last ice age, now slowly reactivating. A communication hub, part of a long-dead network and or not so dead. A portal, linking geologically distant places across the Earth or beyond it. Some even believe it is a kind of sleeping intelligence, machine or biological, waiting for the right frequency, the right alignment, the right moment. Because what's most unsettling isn't that it sends a signal, it's that it's been listening, and the signal is getting stronger. Whispers beneath the waves. To this day, no official body has claimed ownership or responsibility for investigating the site. Sonar scans are routinely disrupted. Boats that anchor too close sometimes don't come back. And local fishermen tell of nights when the lake glows faint blue, just beneath the surface, as if something ancient is stirring in the dark. One diver, before quitting the project for good, left a single note.
We didn't find it. It let us find it. And now it knows where we are.
Some mysteries demand explanations. These demand silence. If this video left something echoing inside you, tap the playlist, pick your next state, because the map you know doesn't show everything.